Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Husnara and I'm the Associate Editor at CheekyLittleCareers.com. This is the second in a series of videos that I'm recording with Robert Greene, and in which we'll be sharing our top tips on how to make really good impressions on vacation schemes and hopefully then convert that into the all-important training contract offer. Robert and I got to know each other via LinkedIn, which is ironic really because we're going to spend this video talking about networking, both in the context of the World Wide Web, but also in the context of virtual vacation schemes. Just a bit of background on Robert. He is currently doing the GDL and he's got 3 vacation schemes lined up, which is super impressive. I have recently started sort of offering him a little bit of mentoring, basically in return for him recording these videos for me, which I think is a great setup. Robert, lovely to see you again. How are you getting on?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. I'm really excited about this video. I think this video is going to be really interesting, really helpful, not just to me, but to lots of students who are trying to navigate this weird and wonderful world of virtual networking. So I think this video is going to be really interesting.
I think it does send shivers down people's spines because they worry that networking virtually somehow feels a bit unnatural because you expect to be in the same room as someone and you think that you won't be able to strike the same level of rapport. What worries you most about networking? When you hear the phrase networking, virtual vacation schemes, what jumps out?
I think the biggest thing that I'm concerned about is how do you come across as being genuinely interested and not too invasive? And I think for me, obviously the firms I've applied to, I'm really interested in, and I want to get to know as much as I can about those firms. But if I do reach out to people in those firms, either before or on my vacation schemes, I'm nervous that I'll come across as just basically trying to forward my own self-interest. I'm only speaking to them because they think I want a training contract, when in actual fact, obviously I do want a training contract, but I obviously want a training contract in their firm, and I want to know as much as I can about their firm. So it's about finding that balance between being interested and not being too invasive. So that's really my biggest concern.
Yeah, no, really valid point. And I think so many people do get this wrong. So I'm glad that you've raised this with me because a lot of people associate networking with selling, and more specifically, selling themselves. And it's about me, 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 me. Look at me. Look how amazing I am. I've got 5 vacation schemes, and I went to this amazing college at Oxford, etc., etc. And I'm like, firstly, shut up. Secondly, listen. And the way you listen and you create that engagement is by taking an interest in the other person and asking open questions. We'll talk about that bit first, but I know you were also concerned about how do you reach out to individuals that you perhaps want to start a relationship with. Firstly, I think a bit of advanced preparation is a good thing. So research the firms that you're going to be doing your vacation schemes with. I know that they do vary because you want to get a sense of the different types of firms that exist within the city, which I think is really sensible. Secondly, start snooping some of the lawyers that work there, snooping on them on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is fantastic because it tells you where people went to university, how many years PQE they are, and their posts might glean in, shed some light on what their sort of pet topics are, whether that's the environment, whether that's crowdfunding, pro bono, diversity, etc. The reason why it's worth doing that quite far in advance, because your schemes aren't until the summer, don't assume that those people are going to be around, and don't assume that the only time you will have a virtual coffee with those individuals will be during the vacation scheme. So I think if you've already got the placements, if you now send connection requests to maybe some of the trainees there, or if you've met anyone through an event that they've spoken at, then I think it's fair game for you to contact them. And it can be a simple case of, I wanted to connect with you because I'm doing a vacation scheme at your firm over the summer. I heard you speak at an event, and I'm really keen to sort of continue that discussion on a one-to-one basis. It would be lovely to meet you whilst I'm doing my scheme. How are you fixed? Sort of thing. It really is as simple as that. Is there anyone in particular you wanted to reach out to?
Well, there was one person that I did meet, a partner at one of the firms, and his actual personal story more than his career really really resonated with me. And I thought, that was actually one of the reasons I applied to this firm, because I really, as I said, his story struck a chord with me. But then I sort of let time slide, and then I thought, more I let it slide, the more I thought maybe it will come across as being too pushy or too, self-interested. So I haven't reached out to this particular person, but it's definitely somebody I would like to speak to, either, as you said, beforehand or during my scheme, if you can advise. And I think you've given some good advice there on how to really approach that. That would be really helpful.
Sure, I think it helps that you've already got a vacation scheme, because you're not in any way suggesting that you're trying to circumvent the process that this firm has in place, because law firms are now quite strict about, nepotism and letting people in through the back door. So for me, networking is not about going around with a begging bowl asking people for vacation scheme places, work shadowing, etc. This is really more of a look. There's some common ground there. I think you said that your prospect is Irish, so tap into that sort of affinity bias. So you've got that commonality there already. You've got the placement at the firm already as well. So those are your two ins, I guess. And you're not asking anything beyond wanting to have an informal chat with the individual just to find out a bit more about their background and experiences. And one thing I do know, and this will lead us nicely on to how do you have the conversation once you've made the initial connection, it really is about getting people to talk about themselves rather than about yourself.
How do you talk about somebody else when maybe you don't know that much about the person, only superficially through reading, about them online?
No, that's a really good point. If you don't know much, then how do you, what's your way in? What's your sort of starter for 10, so to speak? I think open questions. So ones that start with what or how are fantastic. Okay. Why, I think, can sound a little bit confrontational, and it usually hangs on the back of an assumption you've made. So, why did you decide to do a corporate seat? They may not have done. They may have been told that that's a seat they have to do. So you're much better off asking, how are you finding your corporate seat? What have you found most interesting about your corporate seat? Okay. Can you see the subtle difference?
Yeah, I can see how, why is basically almost like a leading question. Where, as you said, how is much more open and less confrontational.
The other one is tell me about. Okay, so in terms of what's allowed, what's sort of within the sort of parameters of acceptable topics versus being overly intrusive. Okay, let's deal with the overly intrusive. Asking people if they're married, if they've got kids, how much they earn, big fat no. Okay, in talking about sort of someone's experiences of working at a particular firm or being a partner at a particular firm is really safe territory. Because it's very work related. Again, finding out about because for me, really, this is about what do you need to know to form a opinion on whether a firm is going to be the right match for you in the event that you end up with multiple training contract offers. Okay, so, and one of the biggest challenges that so many students really grapple with is telling firms apart. And one big differentiator is, of course, culture. So if you learn more about the sort of backgrounds of individuals, their experiences, how they would describe the culture, what they enjoy about their job, what they might, not enjoy so much, that's all really helpful material. Because don't ask a question for the sake of asking it, because it sounds like you're trying to sell yourself. Because some people ask questions because they think it makes them look smart. Okay, ask questions that you want to know the answers to, and that are going to help you to really glean useful information to enable you to make a well-informed decision when the time comes to make that decision. Okay. Now, that said, I think talking shop non-stop can be pretty boring. I know you had a question about socials, but let's talk about that split between talking about work versus talking about someone's non-work life, where it can become a bit more sort of bit more of a minefield, I guess. Again, asking those open questions like, what do you enjoy doing outside of work? Or what are you up to at the weekend? That will give you a little bit of sort of ammunition, I guess, or a bit of insight into what that person feels comfortable talking about. So take their lead rather than asking questions again because you're interested or because you feel nosy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I guess that will be particularly useful for those social events where it's not necessarily a work setting. Obviously, it's a work setting, but there may be virtual socials to help people get to know each other. I was wondering, kind of on that point, what about in group settings? How do you network when, say, there are a number of trainees or a number of vacation schemers in the same room, and there's only limited time for you to engage with somebody, or you're having to engage with multiple people at the same time? What would be your tips in those sort of situations?
That one is really tricky, because I find that with a lot of these video conference facilities, they're designed for meetings, and therefore they only allow one person to speak at a time. And I think, therefore, brevity is key, because no one wants the person who dominates the discussion. Okay, if everyone is feeling awkward, this would be a fantastic opportunity for you to lead the conversation. So you could say, shall I start by saying something about myself? And then what you can do, which is really inclusive, which I think is so important, is encouraging your fellow students to say things. Because look, things that turn law firms off, candidates, is that sort of office clown. So someone who's trying too hard to be amusing, someone who's trying too hard to impress and would quite gladly trample over the competition. So the more inclusive your behaviour, and the more you treat other people as individuals and give them a little bit of respect and a bit of time to speak and show themselves off, the better, I think. But it's really difficult with these group settings. I've had the same challenges when I've done video calls with my family.
Yeah, I definitely had some of those challenging moments with the family.
We talked about socials, and I just wanted to mention alcohol. Okay,
oh yes.
Look, I think that alcohol has become, vac schemes have been infamous for, the sort of social side, and it's that sort of boozy, who's going to get the drunkest, the quickest, and then make an idiot of themselves. Okay, I think that's become, even before the pandemic, there was a real genuine move away from this sort of alcohol-fueled sort of socializing side of vacation schemes, because it can cause offence to people who perhaps don't drink for religious reasons, for example. And also that doesn't necessarily, translate to what someone is going to be like as a colleague. Okay, it's now less relevant with virtual settings anyway. So if your, fellow vac schemers do have a, bottle of beer or a glass of wine in front of them, by all means join in. But if you don't feel the need to do that, then don't feel pressurized to do it. And similarly, if someone isn't drinking, don't play the, well, they're not drinking, they must be boring sort of thing, to keep those assumptions and judgments to yourself. And I think that's much better. And frankly, you won't wake up with a banging headache either. So going back to your sort of in terms of my final thoughts, look, networking isn't a popularity contest. Networking in the context of, more broadly, whether that's social media or going to events or participating in a vacation scheme, is really about forging meaningful strategic relationships with people who you'll get to know over time, and who will be able to serve some sort of need in your life, whether that's that individual becoming an informal mentor, or someone who you can frankly, count as your wing person, and you're sharing the same experiences. Because, qualifying as a lawyer can be a bit of a roller coaster. So it's nice to be able to have that emotional support as well as the practical support. So what does that mean? That means treating people like individuals. And as I said, it's not about selling yourself. It's about being a really active listener who's generous with your time, because reciprocation is also key. And it really wraps up nicely what you said earlier about networking and worrying that it's just, you're doing it for your own gain. And I think if you do reciprocate in the way, you're helping with these videos, and in return I'm offering lots of tips, that's how you manage relationships in a professional setting, and frankly, in your personal life as well.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's
me.
Really helpful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will catch up with you very soon. Take care.
Bye.